Good evening, everyone. We're back with the second recipe in our RCMI Culinary Institute's Taste of India, recorded at our live event March 2nd and featuring our executive chef Suhail Sayed with Hemant Janchan. Our featured recipe in this video is lamb Rogan Gosht.
So now the third and the fourth recipe that we're gonna go for today is the lamb Rogan Josh. So this is one of my favorite recipes in the Indian cooking, and this is for someone who is, if you are a health freak, you are watching your calories, this recipe is not for you. Okay. So as the name describes, the Rogan is that when you see that recipe, when you finish this recipe, you're gonna see a lot of fat on top of that. Okay, so that fat is what is called Rogan. Okay, so the name itself describes that it has fat in it. But like in India, we don't use too much of that hydrogenated oil. Like now everyone uses it, but like traditionally we would use a clarified butter or a ghee, right? So and most of the time it was made at home. Right? So it has got a lot of natural nutritional benefits and stuff like that. So very rarely, like before, we used to hear like someone had a heart problem or like they had to go through a bypass surgery and stuff like that. But even though we have like so much rich dishes in Indian cuisine. But nowadays, since we have like started using that hydrogenated oils, we have started playing around with the structure, like the natural structure of the food. That is when all the problems started occurring. But this lamb Rogan Josh, this is like if you are an Indian chef and you're working in India or in the Indian kitchen, they will let you make two things. Like it's a very common in, like if you work in Europe and you come to as an apprentice, you want to say, I want to work in the kitchen. For the first test, they will ask you to make an omelette. Okay, so this is something in India. If you say I'm a good Indian cook and stuff like that, they will ask you to make a pulao. Right, because we like rice is one of the staple diet of Indian cuisine. Rice, chapati, naan. Right. So if you are an Indian chef, you need to know how to make a good rice. Okay. And the other thing they will ask you is to make a lamb Rogan Josh, because it's such a popular item on the menu. Every restaurant, every hotels, every banquet facility, they will have it on their menu. Okay. So to start with that, to start with the lamb Rogan Josh, for what you do is like ideally the lamb from the shoulder part or the leg part is always good, right? If you use the belly part, it already has so much fat of its own. On top of that, you're gonna add all those ghee and all. It's gonna be too greasy. So ideally, it's always good to have either a boneless leg of lamb or a lamb shoulder, and then we can ask your butcher to trim that little extra fat out from that, because you're gonna incorporate so much of the fat from the ghee. Okay. So to start with, I'm gonna start with with a little bit of ghee here. So this is a clarified butter. Again, you go to Gerard and you'll find, in any Indian store, you'll get ghee. You can ask the salesperson and you'll get the ghee on that. So we have this nice diced lamb cubes over there. Don't go too big as well, but don't go too small as well. This is like, ideally it's good. It's around 3/4 of an inch. Okay, you can ask that your butcher, right? I want like 3/4 inch of a cube, and he will do it for you. So as like everything, we're gonna start with the ghee, and then we're gonna start with some red onions in that one.
I think it's nice to know about the connective tissues to the meat. Things like the leg, the shoulder, it's always moving, right? The tail, the cheeks, it's always moving. The more it moves, it builds a connective tissue. So you want to break it down slowly You don't want to roast it. So you want to break it down with some kind of a liquid, slow heating, slow cooking, stews. So that's very, very important. You don't want to take a rib from here, a nice lamb chop, and then you want to braise it. It doesn't work. It's much better because it doesn't have built that much connective tissue. It's better to just grill it fast, like a tenderloin. But things like this, the legs, the cheeks, the shoulder, you want to braise it slowly, bring it down. It's the best way to cook. Slow cooking is the best way. So.
Like if you have a sous vide circulator, traditionally what we used to do is we used to cook this in the pot, right? And then we used to cook it for at least, like the lamb would take like 2.5 to 3 hours, right? Very slow cooking. That was how the traditionally they used to do. Now with the advent of new technologies and all, what we started doing is we used to marinate everything and then we had to put it in the shipping dish or a hotel pan, we had to cover and finish it in the oven. Because basically what it needs is just need the heat. So now you have got a surround it. But now with the advent of technology going further, you can do it in the sous vide circulator as well. You have all your lamb, you have like you can cook your lamb gravy, everything, and then now the only thing that you are looking forward is to make the lamb tender. So you can take this gravy and the meat, you can backpack it and put it in your circulator at 165 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours, and you'll get a perfect lamb Rogan Josh in your sous vide machine.
And you can buy it. It's pretty cheap nowadays if you like the sous vide pot. Chef loves it. I can't stand it, but I'm old school, I'm reaching 50, so I don't want to backpack my food. I like to see it, touch it, and taste it. And but the new chefs, a lot of new chefs in the city, they love and you can buy it for like $200. You get a backpack, you vacuum seal, you marinate it. And I tried one meat with the Mr. Jones in the kitchen once, and he tasted it. It was like, wow, that's so tender. And that came from the water bath. It is a water bath, basically. So you cook it, you pack it in a bag, and then you cook it in a low water bath, and you cook it for about 3 hours, 2 hours, depends on the temperature. But it's a perfect way of cooking meat. It's a perfect way. So that's why people do it all over the world. In New York, number 3 restaurant, Noma, in Trump Hotel, they have about 10 or 12 in the back. And they got the meat sitting. The chicken is in, the beef is in, the duck is in, and it works perfect. You don't need chefs anymore, so that's another story. But let's see about that.
And talking about the popularity of the sous vide, and then like the first, and then when I think we bought it in the Marriott's first, the commercial sous vide we bought was $3,500. Right? And everyone was like, sous vide circle, something, it was like you are doing some space job or something, stuff like that. But like, at the end of the day, you are still cooking it. But the first one that I bought, I remember, was for $3,500. And when we bought the same one for RCMI, that was $800 3 years back. Because it's a supply and demand, and now since it's like so much in like, the reason why I like it is because it's a very controlled cooking, right? No matter who is cooking, I mean, if I'm in the kitchen, if chef is in the kitchen or someone, but no matter who is cooking, it's still gonna cook the same thing. If you've got like 50 pieces of tenderloin in there, if you know how to use it properly, all the 50 are gonna come a perfect medium rare or medium rare to your desired doneness, right? So it's a very controlled cooking. That's why I mean, you don't have to see the grill because you did all the hard work and then you went on to do something, and by the time you come up there, someone cooked all the tenderloin in there, and I've cooked for like in Westin, I've cooked for events for almost 1,200, and then we are having like 2,200. Like 1,200 tenderloins in the oven, and someone overcooks it, right? Then the first thing comes to your mind is like you need to start preparing fresh resume, right? Because then you're looking for a job. So and chefs have lost jobs for that. Chefs have lost jobs for that because I mean, like if people are paying that much money, they expect their product to be perfect, right? So that way, this one helps us to have a controlled cooking. So now, what we have here is I've got the onions and got the ghee in this one, and it's gonna very important for you here is that this is the most where you need your patience, because if you don't caramelize your onions properly, if they're not brown enough, they are not gonna dissolve in your curry, right? So even if your lamb is broken, lamb is like a bolognese now in your lamb Rogan Josh, but your onion will still have chunks in there. They will be tender, but will still fit in there. So that's why it's very important that you need to wait to get the onions nice and golden brown. So meanwhile, while I was waiting, what I did was I added some salt and some yogurt to the lamb. So you can do this step ahead of time. So the yogurt has got like acidity and it has the bacteria culture. So what it does is like it starts breaking down the protein. And that's why when we started with the moon kolai kebab, that's what I said, we do the overnight marination because that helps the protein to break down or to tenderize. It works as a tenderizer, so it tenderizes the lamb faster. Okay? Okay, so to this one I'm gonna add my ginger garlic paste. So ginger garlic paste goes in the halfway through. Okay, so I have my garlic, I have the chopped ginger here. So that is gonna go through the halfway process. You don't wait till the end because you also need to saute the ginger and garlic so you take the raw flavor of the ginger and garlic from your gravy. If you add the ginger and garlic at the last moment and you don't have enough time to saute them, you're gonna feel that bitter flavor in your mouth because of the ginger, especially ginger. Garlic you can still play around, but ginger if you don't saute it well, you will get that bitter flavor in that. And then so it has to go halfway through because if you see the structure of the ginger and garlic, it's much smaller than the onion. So if you start with the onion, by the time your onion caramelizes, your ginger and garlic is gonna be burnt. Okay, but if you have like you wait till to end, then what's gonna happen is that you don't have enough time to saute your ginger and garlic.
The Indian gravies, for me, you break it down into a white gravy that you take onions, you boil it, and you puree it. So that's your white onion gravy. Normally, when you see a white gravy in a restaurant, they take cashew nuts, they soak it, and they blend it all together. So that's the gravy. And then they flavor it with onion, ginger, garlic, spices, but that's the base. Then you have a brown onion gravy, where it's this one, where you cook it for a very long time, and then you puree it. When you puree it, it's brown. So what you see in a buffet or a restaurant. So you have the white one, you have the brown one, and then you have the classic butter chicken, the mutton, the tomato one. So where all the tomatoes are going in, they put cashew nuts in it, and then they cook it all together. So that's basically how we break it down. And these spices are never ending. Never ending. I mean, after 25 years, I wish I could stand here and say I know it all. It's impossible. And it's important. There's always nice, the flavors are different, the peppercorns are all different. So very important to know this. And it comes with time. If you guys are pretty sure you're cooking a lot, that's why you're here. And so basically it's all about whole spices, toasting, making a blend, a couple of nice books around, really nice, catches the basics, and that's what it is.
It's better to use like fresh spices and make your own spices than buying those spices from the packet. Because first of all, what happens is like if you're gonna go and if you're gonna buy these spices, it's gonna be like if you're not cooking it every day, if you're cooking maybe even if like in 50 days one time, this is gonna last you for 4 months. Okay. And then after a certain period of time, you're opening, you're closing, it loses all the aroma, it loses all the flavors in there. So now it's just a powder in your gravy. But if you're making a fresh spices, small batches, you have that magic bullet, you make a little bit of coriander, make a little bit small portion, it's amazing. Right? Then you don't have to struggle too much over here. You don't have, because the spices itself have got so much flavor in there, so that brings out the flavor from your whole dish. But if your spices, they have been there sitting there for so much time on your shelf, they have lost all their flavor. Now you have to struggle a lot to make that perfect dish out here.
I married a German, so my spices are sitting for 2 years. That's why I come here to cook. I can't cook curries at home, not allowed. Potatoes and sausages. So, he said, you want to make curry? I said, yes, please.
So if you can see the onions and the garlic, they have come like a nice golden brown color. Don't go too further beyond that, because after that time, after that stage, you're gonna start burning out the onions. So to this, I'm gonna add the tomato paste as per the recipe. I'm gonna add a little bit more of the ghee.
Average lifespan 72 in India. Average lifespan around 72. That's what I heard. So all the ghee and the spices.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like you have like this all this ghee and all that, but you also have this cumin. You have the turmeric and all. They have medicinal value. So somewhere I think they work the magic. I think so. Let's discuss this when we are 70 years old. Okay, so then I've got this cumin powder. A little bit of cumin powder to it. Some coriander powder.
90% of the recipes are like this. The spices, the oil, the spices, the onions, the ginger garlic, the tomatoes, fresh paste, depending on what you like. And then all these powders. So it kind of breaks it down, spices, chili, turmeric.
And I have this garam masala powder that's basically the mixture of whole bay leaf, whole cinnamon, whole star anise, cumin powder, coriander seeds, cumin seeds, black cardamom, mace. It's all the mixture of everything. And then we toast it in the pan, and then we grind it. So this is a mix of everything. So that's what is called garam masala.
And you can always send us a recipe. If you want to do something, you want a recipe, you can tell chef, yeah. No worries, right? That's the thing.
Okay, so once we have this, and then this is something, this I learned, and then this is something that I learned, in Indian kitchen, and something is like, it's all eyeball measure, right? Like if you go to like the older chefs and stuff like that, how do you do it? Just put this, and the gravy will be done. And then I asked my mom, it's like, oh, you use half cup. Okay, now India cup can be anything. Right? Like a teacup comes in different sizes, and I don't know which teacup she's telling me about. Right? So there's no measuring cup. So one thing I learned about making the gravies and sorting the recipes and all that. So when you have your ginger garlic paste and everything, stuff like that, spices in there, and then once this mixture starts releasing the fat, okay, when you see the fat or the butter or whatever you're using start disintegrating from the paste, that's the time when it's used, you can add your protein or you can add a little bit of liquid to it. Okay, so that is one indicator that I learned from my mom's cooking.
I never asked my mom because there's 3-4 steps. You're toasting there, you're making a grinding paste there for one curry. It's so much steps, so many different steps. And they never come out of the kitchen. I never saw my mom ever pulling into it, bringing the food out. So for me, I put one pot, you don't know this toasting and grinding here, blending there, last minute. Try to keep it simple. You don't have the time and the energy, and you just go with it.
Okay. So you can see this one is like the spices and all this one is nice and coated to the meat, and you can see the aroma of the spices started hitting the air. So at this moment I'm going to add the curd to it. So that's why when you see the perception over here is like it's very red, so it's going to be very spicy, but the redness comes from the tomato paste, which is not spicy. Then the redness comes from the red Kashmiri red chili powder, which again is not a spicy. And if there's any little bit of spiciness from the garam masala and stuff like that, so the yogurt cuts down the spiciness from that. So it's more like a tangy. It's not a vindaloo where we are using like hardcore vinegar into that, but it has got a little bit of tartness there from the tomato paste and the yogurt. So after we have done with this one, now you see you've got a nice gravy out there with the lamb. Yeah. So at this stage, if you are doing it on the pot, what I would do is I would turn it to very low level, because if you are doing it would be very low if you are doing it from like medium or above medium. Now you have to keep on opening and make sure, because it has yogurt in there, tomato paste, it has got high probabilities that it's going to catch the bottom of the pan. Right? So you have to keep on turning it or stirring it every now and then. But if you put it on a very low heat and then you can cover it with the aluminum foil, it will cook on its own. It's going to take at least like an hour, hour and a half, and it would be perfect. But if you're trying, if you want to do it in the oven, you can pop the whole pan in the oven. It will not make it will take you more than 35 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? And if you are really in a rush, then you can still make this recipe in 20 minutes. you have to use pressure cooker. Have you guys used pressure cooker? Yeah? So it's amazing. Eh?
It is.
It's like sometimes, but you need to know how to use it. I've seen a lot of accidents happening with that one. And there's like a high steam chamber in there, and then I've seen people trying to open, not trying to take all the steam out of that, and it can, and like one time that was in Edmonton, and we were staying together, and this guy never used the pressure cooker, and I just told him like, you know what, just go, and that was at my competition, I just told him, you know what, just go and take the pressure cooker, put it on the side, because you have to take it on the side and just let it release the steam. So he just put it on the side, and out of curiosity, he wanted to see what's going on, and he opened it. And the next thing I saw was there was no rice in the pressure cooker, but all the rice was on the ceiling. So yeah, 15 minutes for cooking rice in pressure cooker, but 2 hours cleaning the ceiling. So life is not always that easy. So questions on lamb Rogan Josh? So yeah, so it's very simple. I mean, you have to have all the ingredients, you have to have the right types of maize, not too fatty, not bad this, you assemble the way we told you. I think John is also going to post it on the YouTube. Okay, so if I was too fast or Hemant was too funny, right, you can still catch us on the YouTube.